got guys like Cheney. You've got guys like all the cabinet members you mentioned earlier who now are trying not to be found guilty of being involved in assassination attempts. But the fact of the matter is all these people at the top of government come out of the big corporations. It's a revolving door thing. And so whether it's Democrats or Republicans, you've got people that are constantly at the top. Well, I call it the corporatocracy, because whether they're working for the government or whether they're working for private corporations, they're all working for the same thing, which is expanding this empire.
Well, John Perkins, I'm not defending Obama because I saw him built up as this big corporate juggernaut. I saw him getting 4+ times the money that McCain got. I wasn't supporting McCain either. I just was clear he was the anointed one. But I do have to give credit when I do occasionally see it. Panetta did scurry over immediately to Congress within days of getting in and said, look, they just, admitted to me they've got all these hit squads. So at least he did that. But was that him covering his butt? Because then you bring up the Attorney General, who's been involved in black ops. I would add Oklahoma City, by the way. Very scary person. We got some federal documents on that, him covering things up. So are you just saying, if it is business as usual, then why would Panetta come out?
Well, I don't have any inside information on Obama's personality or those people around him. But my suspicion is that he's probably a guy with a conscience who would like to do the right thing, and so would many of his people. But you get caught in the system, and once you're in, it's extremely scary. And what are you going to do? How are you going to fight the CIA? How are you going to fight the military? So you try to do whatever you can on whatever front you can. And I've seen this happen time and time again with Latin American presidents who want to do the right things but realize that if they get thrown out or if they get assassinated, that's not going to do any good, because the next president coming along is just going to be scared, terribly scared, and not going to do anything. So you try to stay in power, and you try to do what you can. In the case of a guy like Obama, he's tried to institute some environmental laws that are decent, and he's tried to do things with health insurance, but he keeps running up against very, very powerful forces of resistance. And so it comes down to us. We have to speak out a lot more. We have to do a lot more. We, the people, we have to stand up to corporations and say, listen, I'm not buying from Dole or Chiquita, and send them emails and tell them, we're never buying another one of your bananas or pineapples because of what you're doing in Honduras. You change your ways or we're going to force you to go out of business. And I'll tell you what, if enough of us do that, they'll have to change their ways. If enough of us stop buying Nike and send them emails and saying, we're not buying from you because you get sweatshops in Indonesia, and instead we buy from sweatshop-free organizations and send them emails and tell them why, eventually Nike's going to have to change its ways. And so
I do agree with you that responsible consumerism is one of the strongest tools we've got. That's why these monopoly men want to create nothing but cartels where we don't even have a choice. But, just take 10 years ago, you couldn't find organic. Even in Austin or San Francisco, it was hard to get. Now organics, even in small towns, because people demanded it and then built a market, buying local is getting bigger and bigger.
And we've gotten companies to take trans fats out of foods recently, and we got rid of aerosol cans. We're destroying the ozone layer. We've got companies to clean up terribly polluted rivers. We have a lot of power when we use it. I think we need to understand that it's always come from we the people. We didn't get rid of slavery in this country because Abraham Lincoln found himself in the White House. We got rid of slavery because we voted in a president, Lincoln, who was opposed to slavery. Women didn't get the right to vote because Woodrow Wilson was pro-suffrage. He was not. Women got the right to vote because they'd been demonstrating for it for a long time. And then when Wilson was president, he constantly was out on the road speaking about how we needed to get involved in World War I, how we needed to defend democracy in Europe. Women met him at every place he went, holding up huge placards that said, why should we defend democracy in Europe when half of our population in the United States can't vote? So finally, Woodrow Wilson came around. We didn't get out of Vietnam because Richard Nixon was anti-war. He was pro-war. He had to take us out of Vietnam because he understood that we, the people, were not going to put up with it any longer. Plus, we were losing the war. But I think we need to understand that we, the people, need to take action. And in this particular case, in some respects, it's easier than it's ever been because these things are all controlled by big corporations today. And the marketplace is democratic if we choose to make it such. These corporations only exist because we buy the goods and services, or our tax dollars buy the goods and services. Alex, we need to turn that around. We, the people, need to start taking more responsibility. It doesn't do any good to complain about these things and then go out and buy bananas from Dole or tennis shoes from Nike.
Sure. John, I agree with you on that front, and I believe you're coming at this from a good perspective, that you're a good guy, that you have changed your ways. I just think it's also important to realize that just trying to do the right thing isn't enough. We have to make sure we're not part of the fake corporate clone or counterfeit where they try to get control of our grassroots movements and then say use environmental laws to take farms and ranches or restrict people. Take Austin. I've watched them with smart growth take farms and ranches, not let people build on it. And then 10 years later, they build shopping malls on it and skyscrapers. So I also see the environmental movement run by the big banks, by the very economic pirate ships, these corporations bigger than most governments. And so, yes, I know there's real environmental problems. I don't want to drink poison water. I don't want to drink poison air, breathe poison air. I don't want to cut down rainforest. I don't want to, live off the backs of starving people in Peru. But at the same time, it's a big job to navigate this and try to figure out what's real and what isn't, and how do you not get co-opted. And because it sounds great to take Ecuador and say they have a constitution saying that they're going to give trees and animals rights, but then I always see that by the neo-eugenicist as their pretext to say the world government's going to vote for you because it's voting for the cockroaches and the dolphins, and they outvote humanity. So I'm just saying this is a minefield because these global corporations are in power because they are so slick.
Well, you're right about that, but I think that we can see beyond a great deal of that. We can see that they're using their powers and abusing it. We can see this in the way they take care of themselves. I do a lot of speaking at business schools these days, which I find ironic. Business schools even invite me to speak. A guy wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. But the kids in these business schools, many of them are really interested in some of these subjects. And one of the things I keep running into is some of the icons that are held out there. A guy named Jack Welch, who was CEO of General Electric, is held out as this great icon because he made his corporation lean and mean, which means he laid off a quarter of GE's people, put them out on the street, while at the same time he paid himself huge bonuses and salary increases. And he also took GE away from manufacturing things, goods, being a manufacturing firm, into being a financial paper trading firm, which is one of the things that drove us into the financial crisis.
Yeah, it's engaged in derivatives, that's right.
How do we hold a guy like that out as an icon in our business schools? We should not. And I think if we really open our hearts to these things, we understand that. You understand it, Alex. I understand it. We've got to turn this thing around, and we've got to present better examples to our kids of who do they want to emulate? Who do we want to put on the covers of our magazines? Do we want to put Crook's modern robber baron on the cover of our magazine, or do we want to put people there who are really trying?
I totally agree with you. In fact, I talk so much about the map making of the mind or blueprints in the mind, how the establishment builds these. And I'm not saying Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods or somebody shouldn't be on the cover of something, or Brock Lesnar of Ultimate Fighting. But when this country was the jewel in the crown of the Renaissance, the stars were inventors and scientists and humanitarians and people that stood up against corruption. And so the establishment very cunningly took our real heroes away and gave us heroes of no consequence.
Well, that's true, and we don't need to let that happen anymore. Yeah, you mentioned Tiger Woods, for example. My God, here's a guy that's making, I don't know what he's making this year, $40 million off Nike or whatever. Meanwhile, Nike's paying...
No, he's paid $109 million.
109. Well, meanwhile, Nike's paying its workers in Indonesia that make all the things that Michael Jordan is advertising sub-living standard wages. These people are living almost like slaves, and that's well documented.
Yeah.
So, why doesn't Tiger Woods, if he wants to be our hero, he doesn't need to hit any more golf balls. What he needs to do is say, listen, I'm not going to let Nike get away with this anymore. I'm going to speak out, or I'm going to advertise some other company, and I'll do it for free. Some company that's paying their
that would revolutionize the world. But see, Tiger Woods, the only reason I know about this is I've looked into him and I heard the number on the radio, on Fox News Radio. They announced his $100+ million contract, and that's just Nike, not counting this watch and that shirt. And I guess all of us have to not buy it while they do that. But Tiger Woods has been interviewed how he isn't involved in any politics, in any policies, in any charities, really, except for some charity for college dealing with golf. He thinks it's a moral thing that he's not involved. He thinks it's like a good thing, and the corporations just worship him because he is cold-blooded. And I can't imagine having $100 million a year based on people dying of diseases in sweatshops in these horrible malaria-infested camps and maquiladoras. I mean, and I'm not some goody two-shoe. I mean, I'm a pretty hard-nosed guy, but yeah, Tiger Woods could become a mega icon. His life would have real value. Instead, it's this hollow crap of hitting a golf ball. You're absolutely right, John. It's sickening.